we have 300 employees that just really love people until they can love themselves. And that's one of the things that we focus on is the three main things that we all need, right? We need somebody to love us and that we love. We need to have a community, and we need to have a purpose for getting up every day. And that's the same thing that our folks need when they come through our doors.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our founding partners for their foresight in helping us transform the way conversations start. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. Before the episode begins, I want to take a minute to share that we now have a website where you can sign up to get our weekly email updates on the latest episodes, transcripts to prior episodes, and see what else we have going on. Please be sure to register so you never miss an episode or any other important information we may have to share in the nonprofit space. You can find us now at nonprofpod.com. That's nonprofpod.com. You'll also notice on the website a microphone in the lower right-hand corner. By clicking on it, you'll be able to leave me voicemail messages, maybe a question you'd like me to ask our guests, or just a comment on the program. I may even play your message in an upcoming episode. I look forward to more engagement with you as we continue to grow and better serve our nonprofit community. Thanks. The story we're hearing told in this episode is one of incredible commitment, compassion, and community. I've spoken with organizations that serve our unhoused population, feed our unhoused, even work to support emotionally and educationally those who are homeless. It's not many organizations, however, that do all of this with an incredible success rate of putting people back into society with all the amenities an adult should be able to experience once they're on the road to recovery in their very personal journey. And while there are other organizations that may be similar, none are the same, and certainly few can claim they've been doing this in Sacramento since 1911. Enter Volunteers of America. Their executive leadership is very familiar with the organization, having worked there for over 30 years. Christie Holderegger, president and CEO, has seen a lot of change in both our community, the need for services, and the growth of this iconic organization in our community. We're fortunate to have what they're providing, as you're going to hear in this conversation. Christie Holderegger, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm so excited, especially because of the timing of the year and the significance of what you do and the programs you provide. Volunteers of America is a familiar name to so many of us, but there's really an interesting story here, and with good reason. It's because you've been around for a long time, since 1911 in Sacramento?
In Sacramento, 1911, that's right.
Give us a fast-forward version, if you could, from then to today.
Okay. Well, I wasn't here in 1911, but...
So you look great if you were.
Thanks. Yeah, Volunteers of America started in 1896 back in New York, and in 1911 here in the Sacramento region. And we started with a soup kitchen and a chapel. And over the years, we continue to address some of the most challenging community issues around poverty, around homelessness, around unemployment, addiction, and we just continue to try to meet the needs of our community. So we're an affiliate of Volunteers of America. There's about 36 across the country, but we're incorporated here in the greater Sacramento area. So we have a local board of directors that provides that leadership.
Isn't it interesting going all the way back to 1911, and we're talking about food insecurity and homelessness. I mean, some things never change. And I suspect as much as we would like to, we'll never get it completely eliminated. But through organizations like yours, we have the ability to at least minimize and support the people who find themselves in these situations. Walk us through you have a number of programs. Walk us through the programs that you would say maybe are most significant and what they look like in terms of the implementation in the market.
So Volunteers of America we're a faith-based organization. So we are a church. We're a non-denominational organization, and our ministry here and across the country is a ministry of service. It's how we're providing our services in a very loving, compassionate way. We serve people of all spiritual backgrounds, right? And as well as non-faith groups. And it's really about meeting people where they're at and addressing the barriers they have to independence. So emergency shelters we operate, and then we want to develop this continuum of care, which will be able to help individuals transition from homelessness to independence, and that's the goal. So you're right. We've been doing this for a very, very long time, continuing to address homelessness, poverty, but it's not the exact same people that are out on the streets, right? And we hear that a lot. It's like, there's still homeless out there. What's going on? We're not successful, or the community's not successful. We are really successful. But unfortunately, for every person that comes off the street, there's 3 more people that are hitting the street. And if we can prevent that, if we can quickly and rapidly rehouse people that are situationally homeless, then they don't have to go through that devastation of losing everything and then having to rebuild. And then there's individuals that have been chronically homeless for years. And so there's a different type of resources and services that they need. And so we want to make sure that we're triaging every person that comes through our door to find out what's the best approach for them. And that's going to move them through the system as quickly as possible, but with a lot of love and dignity, because they have experienced a lot of trauma.
So you have the situational homeless, which is caused by something. They're not chronic. And those, I would imagine, are the people that are most likely to reenter quickly. And then we have the chronically homeless, who you also serve with a variety of different programs, mental health, mental wellness programs. I can only imagine the number of people that are engaged in the support for those individuals. Walk us through what that looks like. You mentioned emergency shelters. How many people do you house in the course of a year?
In the course of a year. So let me give you a perspective. Every single night we provide approximately 4,000 individuals with some sort of housing every single night. So that's emergency shelter, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and affordable housing in our community. So it depends on what the individual needs are of somebody and where they're at in their continuum, right, to independence. We also provide 4,000 individuals are receiving some sort of housing from Volunteers of America every single night.
And you do have a larger territory than just Sacramento, because you do go into Nevada, northern Nevada, as well as Northern California. But I would imagine the majority of that is Sacramento, right?
It is. Probably at least 2/3 of our services are here in the Sacramento region. So Sacramento County, Placer County. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's an amazing number of people, not so much from the shocking part of the volume of people, but that you have places for them.
Right, right. So we're really dependent on the partnerships that we have in our community. So it's local government, it's foundations, it's corporations, it's everybody that wants to be a part of the solution of ending homelessness. And so, we are ending homelessness for each person that comes through our door, right? And it's a process. It may not stick the first time. Sometimes it will. But, people didn't become homeless overnight. And so it's a longer term solution. It's really looking at the trauma that they've experienced, their level of mental health, their addiction status. There's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're addressing, because if you just quickly put somebody into housing right off the street, they may not be successful, and most likely they won't. So we really need to make sure that we're not setting them up for failure and setting our community up for failure.
So it's a full 360 service that's provided to the individual based on the assessment.
Absolutely.
Does that include, we've got the housing, what about meals in addition to a place and, a roof over their head, everything's inclusive?
It is. So we provide, so all of our emergency shelters we're providing meals to. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as snacks. And food insecurity is a huge issue. So when somebody is outside experiencing homelessness, it is so overwhelming to think about just your basic survival skills, right? Where you're going to get a drink of water,
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to get a meal, where you're going to find a safe place to sleep at night. And so to think about what their next step is and how to get out of homelessness, you're just surviving, right? And so when they're coming in to be able to provide meals throughout the day, anytime they're hungry, they can just come and get a meal, get a snack. That's huge. And so we have to take care of their basic needs first and then start looking at that long-term plan.
How does somebody know you exist? How do they know where you are? I mean, we know where some Loaves and Fishes and certain organizations like that, but Volunteers of America, I can't say I see a sign that says Volunteers of America, shelter, housing, food here.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something that I've been working on for the last 33 years with VOA. Our name, first of all, implies that we're a volunteer organization, and we certainly use volunteers, especially during the holidays, wrapping gifts and, coming out and serving meals. But we have over 370 paid employees that are in our shelters 24/7, really serving those that are at risk or currently experiencing homelessness. So, a lot of times it's word of mouth. We have been this best kept secret in Sacramento, and that is not a good thing.
Let's change that.
Let's change that, absolutely, because there is a lot of hope, and we need the whole community to be a part of the solution. It's not just the government. It's not just Volunteers of America. It's not just our other colleague providers in the community. We also have to be a part of the solution. So certainly people can find information on the website, voa-ncnn.org, which stands for Volunteers of America, Northern California, Northern Nevada.
And I will put that in the show notes too, so it's an easy click.
Okay, wonderful. And it's our board members that are just amazing leaders in our community that are talking about the services. It's a lot of people that have received services from Volunteers of America. I run into people all the time. In fact, just last week, I ran into somebody that had been in our program, our shelter, in 2007. And she just talked about how we changed her life and her family's life because she had small children at the time. And she still uses the same skills and resources that we provided to her back then. And it's just so amazing. And that's why I'm still here, is those stories.
And that's the rewarding part of it. You get to see somebody who's gone through the program. You see the benefit of the program. You know the program works. And to some degree, that's the minimization of the issues we're trying to help and resolve. And there's the example of, yes, it works.
Yep.
And we just need more of it,
We
right?
do.
You mentioned collaboration, and it's a big part. It's a big topic of our discussion always with everybody that we speak with. Who do you connect with? I mean, I can think of a million names, but I'd rather have you tell me what they look like, because at this point, at least today, as we're speaking toward the end of 2024, some of the most downloaded, call them popular episodes, have homelessness in the name in some way, shape, or form. So it gives you an idea of what the community is interested in, what our philanthropy and philanthropists are looking at. They're looking, how do we minimize or help absolve this homelessness situation and food insecurity. So who do you wrap around with?
So it starts with local government. So City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, Placer County, City of Roseville, Rancho Cordova, El Dorado County, all of those local entities that want to address homelessness in their districts, their areas. And so we want to make sure that we're a good partner with them, and we're collaborating on what's the best way to provide these services. So we start with those entities, and then we continue to reach out to other corporations. So it's, I hate to name some of them because we have so many
that support us.
That's who you're going to forget
once you do it, right?
We are, but some of the real big ones are, Wells Fargo and SMUD and Kaiser and Sutter Health, and those entities that are really wanting to make a difference. And they understand that for every person that leaves homelessness, it benefits all of us, right? It benefits their family, absolutely, but then our schools and our businesses and you and me.
Right.
And so it's a community issue. Again, it's not just the government's problem to solve. We all have to be a part of that solution. And it's interesting when we have, our board members, volunteers come down and serve meals, and it sends a message to those that are in our shelters that the community really does care about them. And there's so much shame that is associated with being homeless that a lot of times they feel like they don't deserve it and they don't want to ask, especially when they're a veteran, right? There's so much pride.
And by shame, you don't mean the fact that they happen to be in this situation. You mean coming to seeking help.
Absolutely. Well, and it's both of that, right?
Okay.
They're ashamed that they've let their families down, they've let their community down, that they have lost everything and they're finding themselves in this situation. And sometimes they don't want to reach out to family. They may have burned all those bridges and they just don't feel like they're worthy. Every single person that walks through our doors has had some kind of trauma. And you think about it, spending one night outside is traumatic, right? It's like, how did you get to this point?
Right.
And, oftentimes I meet with our staff. We have a lot of staff, probably close to 50%, that have lived experience, that have had experiences outside, are in recovery. And so they understand what it's like. And, oftentimes they say, when you're outside, you have to look unapproachable. You have to look scary because it's a survival technique.
And we wonder why people turn to substance abuse and or drugs or whatever in that situation, just to numb the unfortunate.
We have so many individuals that fall into homelessness, not because of addiction, but they certainly end up turning to that afterwards.
Yeah. Yep. Tell us a little bit about the funding of the organization. You touched on city and county, so I'm sure that's a big part of it as a fee for service. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it is. So it's, we have probably about 95% of our funding is coming from local government. So it's a pass-through. So, oftentimes I'll hear from maybe a small foundation that's like, well, you have a huge budget. You have over $40 million, but that's $40 million of services that are going back out into our community. And we have to do more fundraising. We raise over $2 million a year from philanthropy, but that is just getting us to break even and sometimes not break even. So, especially with a lot of our contracts, we're providing the services and then we have to get reimbursed. And sometimes there's delays.
It's not the most timely, right?
Unfortunately not. It's not a perfect system.
Yeah.
And so when there's delays, we have to make payroll. We have to keep the doors open. People rely on us, not just for employment in working in our programs, but the clients that we're serving. We can't just shut the door and say, okay, we don't have the money, so, maybe come back next month.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So just like any other business, no margin, there's no mission. We have to be prepared when we have to put a new roof on a facility. We have to replace a vehicle. Our staff, a lot of them are, I hate to say, not even making a living wage. And we have to continue to address that because our staff care so much about the population. They love what they're doing, but I got to make sure that they are able to make, they're one flat tire away from being homeless themselves. That is not right. That's something we have to address as a community.
Well, I know one of the conversations we have often with so many nonprofits is just because you work for a nonprofit, it doesn't mean you take a vow of poverty as well. I mean, they have to be run as businesses and they have to be competitive, which means they have to have the resources to be competitive because they're experiencing everything that a for-profit business does. Just because the tax status is different, that doesn't change the business operation. And I see so many in that situation of, oh, no, we've got to make sure that margin, no, we can't have any margin. You need margin. You need cash reserves. You need the ability to fund to go forward. So as people are listening, outside of the nonprofit leadership that's listening and understands what we're saying, for the philanthropists and the donors who are maybe not so aware of this, that's the environment we're in. And if you don't pay a competitive wage, you lose the people. You lose the people, there goes the service goes more homeless. And it's this cascade of negativity if we don't get it right. But I think we're at least making noise to where people are starting to recognize that, oh yeah, we need to fund these a little bit differently. We need to look at it a little bit differently. If budget were no object for you, what would the organization look like?
The organization, we already are a very comprehensive organization, right? So we're not just providing meals, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are providing housing, case management, meals, addressing someone's mental health, making connections, working with landlords, developing relationships, getting our people housed. It's a whole spectrum of services that's really expensive.
And workplace reentry.
Absolutely. So
I don't want to,
sure.
You went through a litany, but that's how comprehensive your programs are to get somebody reoriented into the community and productive again. And, that sense of pride and accomplishment that they've gotten from here to there is huge.
It is, and it takes time. You think about, raising your children and all the things that go into teaching them how to open up a bank account, how to budget, how to, when they leave the house, how to set their temperature, how to pay their bills.
Right.
All of that stuff it's a lot. And for those that may have not even had those, lessons growing up or have lost everything, and they have to rebuild, those soft skills and how to make eye contact and how to communicate with an employer, to deal with conflict. All of that is, we have to rebuild people's lives and give them the tools. I mean, they're doing all the work, right? We're just walking beside them and helping them. We're not going to work any harder than they are. And that's what we say, we're not going to work any harder than you, but we're going to be here every step of the way. And so, if money wasn't an object, we would be able to continue to invest in individuals really addressing all their mental health needs. Right now, when folks come in the door, we don't have therapists on staff. We don't have drug and alcohol counselors on staff. We have a lot with that background. And some of the programs, we do have a little bit of the drug addiction specialists, but we need in all of our programs, we need to be able to triage them and then start providing those services. We have so many individuals that come in and they want to see a therapist or a psychiatrist right now. And we can't get them in anywhere. Or they want to get into recovery today and there's no place to put them.
Oh, that's the worst thing.
So it's like we lose people, right?
Yes.
Or then it's just they've changed their mind. And addiction today is so different than it was even 10 years ago. The drugs are so much more just
addictive.
Taking a hold of people's lives with I'm lost for words, but
right.
it's what we hear from our staff is that, especially with the fentanyl,
right?
It's the drug dealers are creating this customer for life.
Right. And sadly with fentanyl, there could be a short life.
Absolutely. And it's being laced in everything. And, and I think the community is starting to understand that when it's happening to their own family members, right? Their children. And once they're hooked, it's devastating. They actually feel like they're gonna die if they don't get that next hit.
How many shelters are there in just, let's say, the greater Sacramento region-ish?
In the community or just for Volunteers of America?
Oh, yeah. No, just yours.
Okay. So we have 2 navigation centers, a 100-bed men and women shelter. We have a 100-bed women's shelter. We have a 60-bed co-ed shelter in El Dorado County. We have 2 senior shelters, 15-bed shelter and a 6-bed shelter for seniors. And that's what's interesting. It's the fastest growing population in our shelters.
I was just going to go there because I remember this from a prior conversation. It's seniors.
Yeah, crazy. In Sacramento, it's about 40%.
40% of the people in the shelters are seniors?
And our shelter are over the age of 55.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's devastating. And, when there's more services for, youth, which you understand, right? But when there's, when people are living on Social Security and they're falling through the cracks and they find themselves homeless.
Sure. Your fixed income doesn't even cover your cost of rent.
It doesn't. Mm-mm.
And I don't see that getting any better anytime soon with the bubble of baby boomers coming into retirement, whatever we call it. And at this point, it may be homelessness. Yeah, that was shocking to me to hear that that's the greatest. And I would imagine as organizations go, you're not alone in seeing that. So anybody that's working with the homeless is starting to see this big bubble of seniors coming into their organizations.
Absolutely.
We've got some engaging conversation coming up with Christie and an astounding story after we hear from the wonderful businesses that make this program possible. I was in the media business for over 35 years and had the great privilege of working with Runyon Saltzman, RSE, Marketing, Advertising, and Public Relations. We collaborated on many different campaigns, but their commitment to the nonprofit sector hasn't changed since their founder, Gene Runyon, started the agency. Over many years and many campaigns, Runyon Saltzman has been committed to improving lives by tackling California's most challenging issues. Guided by research-informed strategies and insightful, creative solutions, RSE develops innovative communications campaigns that raise awareness, educate, and reduce stigma in diverse communities throughout our state and beyond. To learn more about RSE, visit rs-e.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. I want to take a little bit step back.
Sure.
We talked about the city and the county in terms of funding resources. In collaboration with other organizations for the community, do you see people, do they send people to you, or do you send people out to them for some of the other nonprofits? Is there an ecosystem of relationship there?
There is. There's a coordinated entry, and so individuals have to they go through a kind of a test. It's called a VI SPDAT, and it's to look at
Wait, what is it called?
VI SPDAT.
Okay,
It's an acronym, but it's really it's assessing somebody's level of barriers to independence. So depending on how high you score, you're going to be at the top of the list to come into shelters. And so, they're assessed for that, and then there's a system of the shelters that are available, and so we'll let that queue know when we have an open bed, and everything is on HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System. So we're all the providers in the area can access to see if somebody has already received services from a shelter and where they're at in the system. And, each of the shelters, at least in our region, are trying to address homelessness in that area, right, that district first. And then if there's open beds, then they can get individuals from other areas as well.
Okay, see, I didn't know that existed. It's almost like a booking reservation system, so to speak, that everybody can see what might be available. Are you full majority of the time? Is that what it looks like?
We are almost always full. If somebody's moving out, somebody else is coming back in.
Okay.
Or coming in for the first time.
Yeah. Boy, I had no idea. Now we get back to the reality from the big picture, no budget. What would be the greatest need that you see for Volunteers of America?
The greatest need for Volunteers of America would be having access, again, to that mental health. If we were able to have the funding to be able to hire individuals that could provide that mental health therapy and access to meds for the individuals that coming in and access to substance abuse treatment. We would be able to move people through the system much more quickly and healthier for them. So our whole vision is to create a healthy community for all people. And to do that, we have to address their mental health and their addiction and to help them on that road to recovery. It's the right thing to do for them and for our community.
In terms of what that looks like to you, is that through a particular donation space? Is it through more city, county programs? How does that manifest itself from the outside and say,
Sure.
okay, I want to help that. How do I help that?
Sure. It's a mixture of both. I mean, we're working on proposals with funders through the local government to be able to fund those positions. But it's going to take a long time for that to happen. So if we had, donors that were interested in really addressing behavioral health in our shelters, we would welcome that so we could then bring people in and look and be able to prove that this is what it takes and look at the impact we can make if we're able to get people early on. So, right now in our X Street Navigation Center, which is down off of X Street and Broadway, 40% are leaving housed, which is huge. So, what could we do if we were able to address more of their mental health? And it's interesting, too, it's also the housing issue, right? We have so many people that have employment in our shelters that can't find housing. So we have to be creative. We're constant reaching out to landlords and building relationships and, making connections so, two clients get to know each other and then they can be roommates out in the community. So we're having to be really creative and innovative. But the lack of affordable housing is an issue, especially in Sacramento. So we have to address that. We have to address behavioral health and then employment. So that's the area that we want to continue to grow is having employment opportunities to do job training like we used to do a few years ago, but that funding went away. So if we can continue to build that. One of the areas we also want to grow in is around a kitchen operation. So we provide over 3,000 meals a day to the community in our shelters and other shelter providers. And we want to continue to do more job training in that space. And so giving people that soft skills and that job training build up their resume so they can go into the community and be employed.
And that all comes through the organization in that 360 process of getting them fully engaged, soft skills, job skills, opportunity for employment. And we know that there's jobs out there because we haven't filled everything. There is a need, and some of those are the less skilled jobs, which I would imagine works really nicely for somebody who's just coming out of a program to say, I just got to get started again.
Right, but we also want to make sure that they're ready too, because we don't want to set somebody up again for failure, the company that's hiring them. So we want to make sure that they're stabilized, they have some good job skills, and they're going to be successful. And it really comes down to addressing the trauma again, really understanding what people have faced and what's gotten them there. Because if we don't address that trauma and they're not able to heal from it, it's going to continue to surface for them.
Yeah, back to the need of the mental health side of it to service them properly right from the start.
Absolutely.
What's the best way to learn about the organization? Back to the website, I'm going to imagine.
Back to the website, yeah.
And would you give us that URL again?
Sure. It's www.voa-ncnn.org.
Okay, and as I said earlier, I'll put that in the show notes too, because with a little bit of dyslexia, I'm going to get those all screwed up. Even if I try to repeat them back to you, short of looking up at the website that we've got up on the screen behind us. Any success stories that you'd like to leave us with?
I have hundreds over the years, being with this organization for 33 years. Gosh, there's been so many, and that's what keeps me going every single day, because it is devastating to drive down the street and see people camping outside, seeing individuals that are, half clothed and screaming at nobody standing in front of them and thinking that it's their human right to be outside in this weather and freezing to death when they don't have the capacity to care for themselves. That's heart-wrenching. But at the same time, I'm so hopeful because I've seen people that nobody would have ever thought that they would be housed, employed, and contributing back to our community. So I have individuals that were veterans that spent 36 years outside, like my good friend Pitbull Dave. I have
Who was nicely featured, I believe, in a Comstocks issue just a
yes,
month or two ago.
yes, a very proud Marine that came back with so much shame again for what he experienced and what he saw, that he stayed outside for 36 years. He didn't feel like he deserved help, and now he's this amazing employee that is doing the same thing that the staff did for him 4 years ago and bringing him indoors.
You said employee?
He's an employee now. Yes. He volunteered for a couple of years with us, and now he does outreach and works at our shelter.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he's just this amazing human being, and we have 300 of those employees that are just like Pitbull Dave, that just really love people until they can love themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that we focus on is, those three main things that we all need, right? We need somebody to love us and that we love. We need to have a community, and we need to have a purpose for getting up every day. And that's the same thing that our folks need when they come through our doors. And so we have individuals like Pitbull Dave, and then I have a former board member, Nick Hemphill, who spent a couple of years outside, homeless with his wife, addicted. And he came through a number of our shelters and transitional housing employment programs, and, over 20 years ago.
So on the heels of the conversation we had about people who have gone through the program, I think we have somebody who would like to say something. Nick Hemphill, you are the beneficiary of the service and the product of Volunteers America. Would you tell us briefly your story?
Yeah. My story starts off, I'm an addict. I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for 22 years now. And because of the choices that my wife and I both were making back in the day, I'll say, led us to homelessness. We were homeless for over 3 years. At that point, didn't really know how I was going to fix my situation. I don't even know if I was willing to try to fix it at that point. We were unemployed, unemployable. I was an intravenous drug user, so everything that goes along with that lifestyle, I'd become powerless over it. My wife had been hearing the message from my brother who's in recovery, and she heard about some programs that might possibly be able to help us. And she came to me one day and said that she could no longer live that lifestyle, and she needed to get some help. I was okay to stay where I was if that's what I chose, but she was going to make that move. I followed her into the programs, not thinking they were going to work, not thinking it was going to help us, but I didn't have anything better to do at the time, so I followed her in, and we made the phone call and landed into homeless shelters for Volunteers of America. From there is where our life started to change, because we were introduced to some staff members who had lived experience and some who were just counselors who were able to break through that barrier of that trust barrier that we had back then, and gave some suggestions on how to move forward and what we were going to do with our life. And Volunteers of America, the staff, I'd say the best thing that they did is they never broke any promises to us. They laid out a plan and gave us some suggestions how to follow those plans, from a program that was built to transition us from living on the streets to a more structured environment. From there, we graduated, and we were able to apply for the Mather Community Campus program, where we applied for and were accepted to that program, where we got to go there for 2 years and begin to rebuild our life.
How long sober at this point are you today, Nick, and how long have you been married?
So I'm 22 years in recovery, so I have 22 years clean now. My wife and I have been together for 32 years.
What an amazing accomplishment. And getting into the Mather campus wasn't a piece of cake either, if I understand.
No, there are some requirements that I had some barriers I had to get through before I was able to qualify for Mather. Part of that was taking care of my legal issues. I'd racked up numerous charges on the streets, everywhere from vehicle violations to possession charges to shoplifting to vehicle theft. I had to turn myself in and clean up a lot of those barriers before I was eligible to. So one of the things that Volunteers of America did for me was to help me navigate that. Some people are wondering why people who are homeless are resistant to programs. I was one of the people who was resistant because, again, I'm married, and I didn't want to leave my wife alone on the streets. To me, I was protecting her by not turning myself in because, let's face it, things happen to women who are on the streets alone, and I didn't know how to navigate that. And so when I posed that question to Victoria, who was our counselor at the time, and I do get emotional still about this 22 years later, because nobody had spoken the truth to me about what was actually going on. I was the person who was keeping my wife on the streets because I was unwilling and unable to take care of those barriers. Because of my unwillingness, we were still in that situation. Victoria laid it out to me pretty clearly. Jill was not alone. She was with them. She was in the program. We had friends in the program. She was moving forward. If I was to turn myself in and end up in jail, she would move forward in her program. I would get out eventually, and I would follow her and meet up with her again, and we would continue. At that point, I'd already trusted Victoria, wholeheartedly. So I turned myself in and was able to navigate that and clear up those charges, move forward. And my wife and I were able to go to Mather together and move forward with that program.
So that would seem like a happy ending at this point. Now you're good and you have to work. You don't want to end up back on the streets again, a cascading cycle of things that just don't work. So are you working for Volunteers of America?
No, I'm not working for Volunteers of America. I'm on the board of directors. I've been on the board of directors for 9 years. It's a volunteer board. And you're right. And where does it go from there? Because now we've been accepted to the Mather program. But Jill and I and our counselors and everybody were pretty clear with us that wasn't the end point for us. That was the starting point. We still had things we had to navigate. Resumes. We had to figure out what we were going to do with our resumes because there was a gap from us living on the streets and before we came back into employment. So we had employment service workers. We had, case management. We had support staff. We had credit specialists to help us rebuild our credit. And those 2 years helped us navigate all of that as well as getting back in contact with our families, building our support system and building our recovery. It was really an all-inclusive program that was tremendous.
So you're a board member, but you have a job. What is it you're doing?
And so in 2007, my brother and I, going through the Mather program, I was able to get back into my field of choice, which was to get into the electrical field and become an electrician. That's what my brother was doing at the time, so I gravitated towards that. In 2007, my brother and I started our own company, which is Hemphill Electric. And in 2015, we went corporate. We still hire people who are in recovery to this day. We're licensed in California, licensed in Nevada, and doing well with it.
Nick, it's just an incredible story. Not just the time of addiction, the source of addiction, the homelessness, the marriage. 32 years for a marriage to last through the cycle of what you guys have been through is incredible. Marriages don't last for business owners, much less everything else that you've gone through. Those are incredible challenges. And you've just done an amazing job with the support of Volunteers of America to get you to where you are today with a successful electrical company.
Yeah, it really is. I still pinch myself every now and again because I can't believe that we've come so far, and it is truly because of the programs and the help that we've received. We wouldn't have been able to do it alone. A lot of challenges, like you say, keeping the marriage together. But back in the early days, even when we were I always laugh because I say Volunteers of America was everything for us. They were our drug counselor, they were our employment service worker, they were our caseworkers, and they were our marriage counselor as well. So.
Nick, I can't thank you enough for sharing that story, and I'm so anxious to see the benefit of what this program will do, and I mean the podcast with Christie explaining the organization, and now you a testament to the success of the organization. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Those are the answers we want to hear. Those are the things we want to hear. Even if it's just 1 out of 100, it's that one that makes all the difference in the world, and that's one less person who is living a life of insecurity and homelessness and no contribution to society whatsoever, back to your point of shame and guilt and worthiness. Amazing.
It is. And it's, it reminds me of that starfish story of, you can't save every starfish that comes up on the beach, but by throwing one back, you saved that one, right? Mm-hmm. And, I often have individuals saying, well, yeah, there's so many people on the street and we're losing, right? Or it's just getting worse. It's like, yeah, but they're not the same people that were there a month ago, 6 months ago, right? They've come through the programs and they're back in the community. They're different, but it's so sad to think that, everybody looks the same. Mm-hmm. Because we're not really seeing people for who they are. And they're invisible a lot of times, and we can't treat them that way. We got to give them a voice.
Well, and to your point earlier, you had mentioned something before we started the conversation of nobody wears a badge that says, I'm food insecure, I'm homeless, I need help. It's just not human nature. You don't do that. So either they see the value in the program because it exists, and if it doesn't, we lose them.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, 33 years of involvement, now as president, CEO, you've seen so much take place in the community and with the organization. That's a long, long time with the organization, and that experiential equity that you've got is so valuable to not only the community, but to the people that you work with. I mean, from the homelessness and employment support, Volunteers of America is just an incredibly valuable resource to us in our communities. So thank you, and thanks to all the employees and the volunteers that you've got who are doing what you do every day. We know it's a struggle, and I don't think anybody on the outside recognizes the difficulty that you deal with every single day, and in some cases your own employees because of the pay structure. So to them, a big thank you to you for keeping them together and on task for the mission. We so appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. It's all about gratitude. I'm grateful to our staff that show up every day with love in their heart to give people an opportunity and let them be seen and love them until they can love themselves, because that's what it's all about. Thank you for letting me be here.
Christie, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. If you have a need for the services or products our sponsors offer, please reach out to them. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSC, marketing, advertising, and public relations, creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of, is recorded at, and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.